Hello and welcome. Today we are diving deep into a fascinating topic, gold. You see its price flashing across the news all the time, but have you ever stopped to wonder what really makes it move? Well, let's get into it and uncover the true drivers of the gold market.
So I want to start with a question for you. If you've always figured that gold is just like any other commodity, like oil or corn, where the price is all about supply and demand, what if you're not quite right? What if there's a whole other story going on? Because, as it turns out, gold is different. It really doesn't play by the same rules that govern almost everything else we trade.
Okay, so think about something like oil. We find it, we pump it, we burn it in our cars, it gets consumed. It's gone forever. But gold is fundamentally different. It gets accumulated. Pretty much every single ounce of gold that's ever been mined in all of human history, well, it's still here. It doesn't get used up. It just gets stored and changes hands from one person to the next.
And just to give you an idea of how little new supply matters, all the new gold mined each year adds only about 1% to the massive stockpile that already exists. This means the supply is unbelievably stable. It barely responds to price at all. You can't just, turn on the taps and get more gold.
So if the classic supply and demand model is kind of broken for gold, how are we supposed to think about its price? We need a totally new framework, a much better analogy for an asset that basically never dies.
And here's a great one. Think of all the gold in the world like all the apartments in Manhattan. The number of apartments is, for the most part, fixed, right? New construction is just a drop in the bucket compared to what's already there. So what sets the price? It's not the new buildings going up. It's the constant bidding war for the existing apartments. It all comes down to who is most determined to own a piece of that real estate right now.
This quote just nails it. You can't pump more gold, but you can bid it out of someone's hands. The price isn't about production, it's all about conviction. It's about the tug of war between who wants to hold it and who's willing to sell it.
So this brings us to the main characters in this tug of war. To really get a handle on the price, you have to understand that there are two very different kinds of buyers out there.
On one side, you have your conviction buyers. Now, these are the big players. Think ETFs, central banks, major speculators. They're not buying gold because it's on sale. Nope, they're buying because they have a big picture thesis. Maybe they're hedging against risk or making a huge macro bet. They are the ones who set the trend. Then, on the other side, you have your opportunistic buyers. Think households and emerging markets, for example. They're super price sensitive. They buy the dips. They provide a price floor, but they don't drive the direction of the market.
Okay, so if one group is setting the floor and the other is setting the trend, which one do we really need to watch? Well, it's not even a contest. It's the conviction buyers, all the way.
And get this. The money flowing in and out from these conviction buyers, just this one group, explains a staggering 70% of the monthly price movements in gold. 70%. So here's the key. If you can understand what they're doing, you pretty much understand the gold market.
And this relationship is so tight, there's even a rule of thumb for it. For every 100 tons of gold that this group buys on a net basis, the price tends to go up by about 1.7%. That is a powerful and surprisingly direct link.
All right, so let's pop the hood on this powerful group. These conviction buyers really fall into three main buckets. You've got your exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, you've got central banks all over the world, and you've got your large-scale speculators. Now, they all drive the trend, but they're often buying for very different reasons.
First up, ETFs. These mostly represent long-term investors in the West, and their demand is hugely sensitive to interest rates. Why? Well, think about it. Gold just sits there in a vault. It doesn't pay you any interest. So when interest rates on other things, like government bonds, go up, the opportunity cost of just holding gold goes up too. It makes gold look a little less attractive.
Then you have the central banks. For them, gold is the ultimate neutral asset. They're buying it to shield their country's reserves from geopolitical messes, like sanctions, or financial risks, like worrying about the stability of, say, the dollar. For a central bank, gold is the ultimate insurance policy.
And that third group? The speculators. This is the fast money. They're jumping in and out of the market based on the latest headlines and shifts in sentiment. They create all the short-term noise, the day-to-day volatility.
but they're really just dancing around the bigger, fundamental trend that's being set by the ETFs and the central banks.
So if the price of gold is being driven by these conviction buyers who are all hedging against some kind of major risk, what does that really tell us about gold's ultimate purpose? This is where we have to challenge another really common idea.
We always hear that gold is a great hedge against inflation, right? But the truth is, it's a bit more complicated. See, during periods of normal inflation, what do central banks do? They raise interest rates to cool the economy down. And as we just talked about, higher rates are generally bad for gold. But what about those periods of really high inflation, when people start to lose faith in the system itself, when they doubt the ability of institutions to get things under control? That's when gold really shines. It becomes the go-to store of value completely outside the traditional financial system.
And that brings us to the single most important takeaway. Gold isn't really just a hedge against rising prices. It's a hedge against losing faith in the very institutions that manage our financial world. It's an institutional credibility hedge.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. If the true driver of gold is a bet against institutional credibility, a hedge against financial and geopolitical risk, then what is the price of gold really telling us about the state of our world today?